Welcome back, everybody, to the Booked Solid podcast. This is Steph, and I'm here with my co-host, Hannah Caitlin Parker. And once again, we are sitting here going, how are we this lucky? Annabel Monaghan, it is our privilege to have you here today. You listeners likely know her from her 3 gorgeously colorful summary love stories, Nora Goes Off Script. I'm sorry, I messed that up. I'll re-record this. Nora Goes Off Script, Same Time Next Summer, and Summer Romance. Her books have truly exploded and captured hearts in droves since she entered the women's fiction and women's romance space in 2022. She lives in the New York suburbs with her family and dog, and we are so happy to have you here on Book Solid. Annabel, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, of course.
Yes.
We have the map covered today, everybody,
Yes.
from California to Alabama, all the way to the East Coast. Yep. It's always fun when we're in different time zones and just here to chat about all the things.
Good.
Yes, we are so excited. I am listening to Summer Romance now. It is my second audiobook ever. I don't know how late. I'm so late to the game, but I am loving it. Just... Yes, I've been against audiobooks for quite a while now.
I haven't listened to it. And I get really nervous listening to my own audiobooks. And I get like 2 sentences in and then I start editing it. Like, that's the stupidest sentence I've ever read. Why would I have written? Like, I just get really self-conscious. So I really take everybody else's word for it when they tell me that they're reading the audiobook.
Isn't that so funny? I recorded, I didn't perform it, but I did an audiobook of my second book as well this year, and I felt the same way. There's some people, like Devin Daniels loves listening to her own audiobook. I'm the same way. I cringe. It's like hearing my own voice, but it's not my voice, but I'm like, the editing is just funny.
Yeah. No, I can do it. Yeah.
I know, but I did a combo of this last one. I have read and adored all 3 of your books, and I did both for this last one, and they were both phenomenal. The narrator was so good. She did such a fantastic job.
She's amazing.
Really.
I keep hearing that from people, and one of these days I'm just going to get over myself and sit down and go on a bender and listen to her.
And you'll be happy. I know you'll be happy.
I'm going to be surprised. Like,
yeah.
What happens?
I wrote that? What?
Did that? Look at that sentence. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Well, that kind of leads into our first question. We want to start out by talking about summer romance. I am loving it. I'm about halfway through it. Stephanie's read it. She just gushes about it. And Bookstagram, I have seen it so much all over the place. And I have to say, I have been pleasantly surprised because the cover, you've got this bright and fun, happy novel, and then it's got some deep stuff in it. Like, it really surprised me in the first few chapters. I was like, hold on a minute. But we would just love to hear your heart behind this book and kind of where it started and what it means to you.
It really means everything to me. This book, I just set out to write. I was going to write a book about just the difference between our internal lives and our external lives. I got stuck on this idea about a professional organizer whose life was a mess. I was like, yeah, I can understand that. It's so easy to give other people advice, and we just cannot get out of our own way. So that was the book I wanted to write. It is sort of the book that I wrote, but very quickly, when I started writing, she's a recently separated mother of 3, and her grief over her life seemed disproportionate with losing this idiot husband of hers. Like, if that guy walked out, I would be.
Yes.
And I realized that her way, and that it wasn't like just the grief of losing her mother. It was losing that person who had been like an everyday go-to part of her life. And so she gets unstuck by meeting this adorable guy, and she has this big romance, and they have big love. But under the story is this exploration of a little bit about grief, like, not too deep, but also about mothers and daughters and
Mhm.
how, it's kind of hard to be a mother and a daughter. It's like you don't know how much you're supposed to step in. It doesn't know, you don't, it's just like really hard to figure out that relationship. And so I did a deep dive into Allie kind of forgiving her mother after she was gone about all this
Mhm.
stuff that had happened in her life. So I ended up like opening a vein into this book that I didn't really mean to. And I cried a lot while I was cry a
Yeah.
lot reading it, but I cried a lot while I was writing it.
Mhm.
It turned into a deeper thing than I meant.
Don't
It
you love when
was
that happens?
so deep and powerful. Yes. And then your authors know about your own mother. Just, I had already cried a little bit throughout the book. I am a crier, and this one in particular. I also loved the professional organizer as a job, and that juxtaposition with the mess was so brilliantly done. But I loved that you were able to open that vein and share, no doubt, through what you have walked through, the grief with your own mother and just that relationship. It was just a really beautiful book. Like
But I
Hannah
will
said, it
say,
was,
like, for your listeners, it's not a simple book.
yeah.
And
No, it's
my
not. It's
mother
not.
passed away 15 years ago.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I have distance from that loss. If I had written this
Yeah.
book 15 years ago, it would have been like just this.
Totally.
It's with that distance that I can kind of look at the relationship I still have with my mom. I
Yeah.
think I said it in the author's note. I talk to my mom in the car all the time. Like, Mom, did
Hmm.
you hear what that guy said? Like, I talk to her just like Allie does, and so it's a lighter thing, thank God. Than
Yes.
Mhm.
It
tragedy.
is. It's so good.
Yes.
I am curious. So how long have you and your husband been married?
We have been married 28 years.
So you guys have been in it for the long haul with your three boys.
Mhm.
You write the second chance and that second act and woman after divorce so well. I mean, it feels so real. It's hilarious. And you're rooting for these women. Nora goes off script. When that book came out, it was 2022. That was the book. And discovering you as an author was just such a gift. I'm like, this is what I want. I want to laugh and feel and all of it in one. How do you write that second act story arc so well? And does it come naturally to you, or is it difficult? What is that like for you actually drawing these characters in their second
All of it.
chances and with where you're
All of
at?
it.
Yeah.
It's really, really difficult, and it comes naturally to me. I think that both of those
Yeah.
things are true,
Yeah.
equal
Mhm.
parts. I grew up with a single mother, so when my
Mm-hmm.
mom was like the whole time I was growing up, my mom was dating. So
Hmm.
that maybe informs my perspective on what that might look like. She
Yeah.
was
Mhm.
divorced twice, and I kind of saw how that went down. So I think that that's like all in my subconscious. But
Yeah.
just being in the world for as long as I have seen women, in their 30s start again and fall in love again. And there's a different kind of appreciation for falling in love at that time in your life because you have so much other stuff going on and it feels
Mm-hmm.
kind of magical in a different way. Um,
Yeah.
so yes, no, I'm not getting divorced, and I knock on happily married. But I do like writing about that starting again thing.
Yeah.
It really
Mhm.
interests me. People
Yeah.
getting unstuck and finding new happiness.
Mm-hmm. And this was your first best friend's brother story, right?
Yes.
And that was really, really fun.
I didn't
I
even know it
hadn't
was a thing
read.
Yes.
until after I wrote it. They said, "Oh, I know what trope that." I didn't know that was a thing. But yes.
It's so funny. I haven't actually read a ton of it, but I said this on we did a summer book wrap podcast episode a couple of months ago, and I said this about your book. I was like, it was what I didn't know I needed in a book, because I haven't read a ton of it, and I just really loved it. And I loved the element of her not knowing who he was. And then I also loved the skateboarding, I have to say. Where did that come from? How did that inspiration point strike? And when did you decide to incorporate that? Because it was just the cutest. I loved it.
I can be really wishy-washy on a lot of things in a book. Like, oh, you're right, it was stupid. Let's cut it. I was so committed to this skateboarding thing. I mean, just like ridiculously so. I think it started, I think I was listening to a podcast, and it was just talking about a skate park in someplace in the Northeast that really revitalized a community. It was like a place for the kids to go and all this, and how skateboarding is, it's more than a sport. It's a culture. So I started thinking about skateboarding, and I actually started going to chat rooms with skateboarders and reading blogs by skateboarders.
I love this.
Yeah, you can imagine. They're like, and there's something about skateboarding that it's a little bit spiritual, and it's about doing the work to command your body and learning the skill, and then completely letting go, and actually trusting that when you fly up in the air, you're going to successfully land on this piece of wood that happens to be on wheels. Like, it's a crazy thing to skateboard, and you're probably
it really is.
But it's a way of life. And the more I was doing this procrastinating deep dive into skateboarding, I realized it's a lot like falling in love. And I just really wanted to do this. So I write a first draft of this book, and he's a skateboarder. And my editor says, no, no one wants to.
That's hilarious.
A middle-aged skateboarding romance.
She was like, this is not sexy. Like, and I think I wrote 6 drafts of this book before she said, okay, yes, we can keep the skateboarder.
I am so glad you hung in there and committed, because
Yes.
I loved it. And I have an older brother growing up. So even though it was her best friend's brother, I growing up had the brother's best friends who were always around, and their skateboarding phase really stuck with me. And it was hot, and it's honestly a fascinating, very cool sport. And as soon as you were saying that about you have to let go, and just honestly, if you watch videos of Tony Hawk, it's like, are you kidding? Like, any skateboarder, they're so talented. And that metaphor, I'm all in with you. And I'm so glad you
Also, Steph, I think it's a California thing, because
oh, you know what? That makes a lot of sense.
I'm over here just like,
it really does.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, when I was first on tour talking about this book, a lot of the response was, oh, I was really skeptical about the skateboarding thing, and then you won me over, which is what I expected,
Right.
I
Sure.
was just out in LA. Everyone was like,
Yeah.
of course. Like, that's the hottest
Right?
thing ever. And I said, well,
It's 100%. Right. And every surfer boy also skates. Like, it's kind of all goes together. And I snowboard. So, I get it. I'm in. But that's so funny. I know.
the cultural differences that's hilarious.
I
Like,
know.
you don't really think about those things when you're writing a book. Like, I'm drafting right now, and there were some lines in mine that my beta reader is from the North, and she was like, I have never heard this term. She's like, does it mean what I think it means? I was like, what? Like, we say this every day. She's like, don't put that in your book. But you don't think about those things, like skateboarding here. No, but
I know.
it works.
I know.
Thing for writing a book, because you really just bring yourself into the book, and you think that you're writing fiction, which of course you are, but you're pouring so much of your own experience into it that you have to be really careful just about revealing all the stupid things you think that probably aren't true.
Right.
Yes.
So I think a beta reader is a great idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
You said something in there that I'm going on a tangent, even though it's not our technical next question, because Hannah and I are both deep in revisions right now. Mine is for I'm with my first agent, so I'm doing our revision before our submission, and then Hannah has her book deal already and is working on her revision, and so we're both in that, like, in it. And you said you had about 6 drafts, and you saying that is just like a balm to my soul, that it takes time to get there. So I would love to just talk a little bit about your process. And do you just go straight pass through to the first draft and get it out and then go back? And also, I'm curious, at your level, after 3 books like this, at what point do you share it with your editor?
Okay, you guys,
Those are
honestly, listeners, go read my books. Let's not talk about my books anymore. Let's get you guys through your revisions, because this is like the most, let's talk about this. This is
yes.
painful. And it's not like climbing up a really steep hill, because if you worked hard enough, you could get to the top of the hill. It's like you're trying to do something and it might never work. And it probably won't. It's so like true. It's such a frustrating thing. So yes, I go through, I mean, my editor is like, she's actually the smartest person probably that I've ever met in my entire life. Right. So it's
God bless
horrifying, the stuff that I show her. Horrifying. And what I do is, because I'm writing a book a year, I don't have time to work on a book for 10 months and show it to her for the first time. Like, that is not a thing I can do anymore, because if it's a disaster, I really only have 2 minutes or 2 months to write a new book. So
2 minutes is accurate.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Yeah.
I show it to her. And the thing that I have on you guys, I think, is that I'm older than you are. And so I'm less like, care what people think. Like, I'm able to let that go. So I'm not afraid to write really bad stuff, really just bad stuff. And so I write a draft of a book that is, professional organizer. Her life is a mess. She meets this guy. He has a skateboard. He pretends to be her divorce attorney. And then, God, I hope it works out. I don't really know what's happening at the end. I write a book that's like that. I write so that I can learn who she is. And I maybe go back and revise that book twice before I know who she is. And then as soon as I know who she is, then I kind of click in emotionally to the story. And I'm like, oh, I know how she'd feel in this situation. And then I go back, and it is, easy is a strong word, but it is easier to go move my body through all of those scenes again with like the right kind of emotional pitch. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
If I already knew who the character was before I started the first draft, then that probably would be a really easy writing experience. But it's just hard to know. And I think if you know a character immediately, probably because you've already seen that character before.
Yeah.
So, and you don't want to do that. But just like when I'm revising also, it's like, don't get too precious about your words. You can make more words. Words are infinite. So if it's not working, just get rid of it. Like, have the confidence to know that you can do another pair. Like the whole chapter, it was the worst. Get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I do.
This is like the therapy session we need and didn't know to ask for. So thank you. It's so encouraging. And yes, there are infinite words, and it's so hard sometimes to cut. Yeah. But so if it's bad, get rid of it. If it's slow, get rid of it.
And also, if you're bored while you're writing, think about that, because it's boring. If you're not feeling like a little while you're writing, then you're missing something in your story. It's very much about how you're feeling. And I would also say that when you interview the person who comes on here and says, yes, I write a book, I go away for 3 weeks, I write it in one draft and I send it in, that person's just lying to you. Like, that's not a thing. Who sits down, even it's not. This isn't easy to do. By the time you're done with your book, it's like, oh, that must have been easy to write, but it wasn't easy.
And it's the
It never
layers.
is.
It's the layers of the emotion. Yeah, and revisiting it. I'm on like, oh, I don't even know what draft already, but it just was working on it yesterday, and I'm like, you do get to know her. And Emily was like, I get it. I know what she would do in this moment, and it is feeling
That's
natural.
really good. That's
Thank,
exactly where
yeah,
you want to be.
yeah.
Oh,
Thank you so
wow.
much for sharing that. That's so
I'm
good.
actually revising a book right now too, so I'm like, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
And the amount of mean things I say to myself is like,
Hmm.
that has to stop, right?
Yeah.
Like I find
Isn't
my
that the
own
truth? Oh yeah.
like, oh, this is just, you've got to just, I have to.
Yeah. The words get really creative when I'm being mean to myself. I'm like,
Yes.
wow, I'm really just be really mean to myself. Oh my goodness.
I would love to know, staying on this tangent for a minute, I would love to know what your like physical process looks like. Like, are you working in the computer document, or do you like print it out once you're done and kind of go through it? I think that's been my biggest like hold up lately is like, okay, I've got this draft. What do I do next? Like, how do I proceed with all these edits and all these changes I need to sift through?
Yeah. So I did print it out one time. I did that strategy because I saw Carly Fortune does it, and she like has this whole thing, and I thought I need to be more like her. It didn't do anything for me except go through an entire ream of paper and draft the name. It does not work for me. So I try to prioritize like what the biggest things are that I need to do in a revision and do that first. Because if you do the little things, then you'll find out that you needed to cut that whole chapter anyways. So that was a waste of time. So I try to tackle, and I also try to tackle topics. Like right now in the book I'm writing, I am tackling making the relationship make sense. And then next week, I'm going to tackle making the backstory make sense. So I do that sort of in pieces. When I have no idea what to do, and I think this is when other people print things out, I will make it a PDF and read it on my iPad like I'm reading a book. Like I'll go sit somewhere else and I'll be like, oh, a book. And I'll just sit and read it. And I'll have the experience that you're going to have reading it. And I'm like, wow, I can see why this is no good. Like then it becomes sort of
that's smart. No, totally.
So some people change the font.
I think that's...
Have you ever heard of doing that?
I have.
I would probably have to be the one to do that because I tried to just like read through it like a book the other day, and I was like, these are my words. I found myself like reaching for a pen and being like, okay. Like I have to fix this. I have to fix that.
It's funny you say that because yesterday I had to write a whole new chapter to insert into this sequence to strengthen this portion of the book. And I was like kind of dreading writing this chapter, even though my agent is right and we need it. And now it's so much better. But I was like, I'm going to do this in Calibri instead of Times New Roman. And it gave me a little pep in my step. I wrote it in a different font. So I don't know, writing in a different font was a good move for me yesterday randomly. And I think also
your own mind that's in your way. So you need to figure out what it is. Like if I go to the library, I have made an effort. So I might as well get some work done. I've gone all the way to the library. So it's like going to the gym. Like I trick myself into, you just have to
I know. Totally.
And everybody's different. I figured that out.
Yeah. Totally. We would love to go back a little bit. I know our listeners want to know, and certainly we do too, about the beginning of your career in this space of the women's fiction and romance that you write so well. Before this, you wrote YA fiction and you were a columnist. So at what point did you kind of realize you wanted to make that pivot, and what did that look like for you? Did you need to get a new literary agent? Was it something that was ever suggested to you along the way? Take us back.
Okay, so I will take you back. So I wrote my first book when I was 37. So this is not something that I've been doing my entire life. I was at home with kids before that. I'm sort of still at home with kids. And I started writing young adult because I don't know. I started writing this book. Looking back, I think that it was because I wanted to protect myself a little bit. When you write a novel, you reveal like everything you think about the world. And so writing young adult fiction, I was revealing what I thought about the world when I was 17, which feels
Mm-hmm.
not vulnerable to me. So I did that. I wrote a couple of books. Not very many people read them. And then I started writing a column for my local paper. And I mean, like my small town local paper. They paid me, I think they were paying me $60 every 2 weeks to write this column.
Mm.
And that was about like my life and mom stuff and my household and, kind of like the poor man's Irma Bombeck. And that became very popular. It got picked up by a lot of other publications, and I've started having an Instagram following, and that became a thing. And I was very surprised by that. And I did that for 10 years. And I think looking back that I was sort of working on my grown up voice. Like I was getting the confidence to say, this is actually how it is. This is actually what I think. This is what my life is like. And then COVID happened. And, in the spring of 2020, it got really quiet. And I sat down and wrote Nora Goes Off Script. So I didn't know what was going to happen, obviously, to the world. I didn't know if anyone was ever going to read that book, but that was sort of, my bread. Like that's the thing I was doing during COVID. And I sent it to my young adult agent, and I don't think she ever read it. Like she had a lot going on. She didn't get back to me for 6 months. And in the meantime, my friends were like, you might need to find a new agent. And I'm like, do you think so? So I did. I found a new agent, and she sold it right away. So that's how that.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was actually amazing. It was one of those like, I can't believe this is happening experience. Yeah.
Who is your agent
Her name's
now?
Marley Rusoff.
Amazing.
Yeah,
and how amazing that you sold it right away. And at a time when the world really needed books like yours, honestly. I feel like post-COVID kind of what we all need is some depth, but what we want is to be entertained. And it's just so wonderful to have that
I
beach
think
read.
it probably was the right book at the right time. It was I guess all of my books are. It's like it's a book that leaves you feeling like just a little bit better. Nothing really bad is going to happen. If it's happen, it's going to happen for like 3 pages, and we're going to
it's gonna have a happy ending
every time.
What was that? It sounds like a very quick flurry of a submission. Like for you, was it just like, oh my gosh, it sold? Was there an auction? How did it go down?
The thing. It's so funny. I can never think of this word when I need to think of this word. It's the thing where someone pays to take it off the table. It's the same word in real estate.
The preempt?
Yes.
So, I had it in my head, but I was like, wait, is that right?
Right? Yeah, because I'm a publisher's marketplace nerd. I just signed with my first agent a month ago, so I was on there a lot. You want to see who's signing what deals and whatnot, and I would see that, and I had to look up what it meant. But the preempt really is like, we want this, everyone else out of the way.
And so I had talked to a bunch of people, and there was a bunch of interest. But the one that I felt in my heart, the guy you want to take home from the bar, that was the one.
Yeah.
She was the one that preempted, and I was like, oh, thank you. Because she's just, and so, we're working on our 4th book together, and
that's amazing.
The reason that she was so appealing to me, besides her giant brain, is she was the one who said, I really love this book, and I have some suggestions. That's the editor you want. That you want the editor who's not going to say, perfect, let's print it.
Yeah.
You don't want that. You want the one who gets the best it can be.
Totally.
And, she's done that for me time and time again. It's been amazing. Besides my husband, this is the best person.
Yeah.
Ever happened.
Isn't that so great? She's going to tease me for shouting her out so many times, but Devin Daniels gave me that identical advice with an agent. She said, because her agent who got her mega deal with Berkeley for 3 books, her books are the best. She was like, you don't want an agent who's like, this book is perfect. Like, the agent I signed with did have the most brilliant suggestions. She's like, that's a good sign. They mean business and they're not blowing smoke at you. So
Right. No,
we know it's good advice, right?
I mean, it's a
Right.
lot of work. And you know what's really easy is to say, this is good enough. That's easy.
Right?
Yeah, but that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, it's very inspiring that you were able to make that pivot, and also that you wrote your first book at 37. I was 35. I'm 38 now, but I always was like, I want to write a book by 35. I want to write a book by 35. And then that came really fast, right around COVID, and I did it. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I wrote my first good book when I was 50. So,
yeah,
I mean,
because right, because that was your YA days. And I just think what you are able to give us as a writer is because of your life experience, and you have so much to offer the more life you live. So
honestly, not to get too weird, but I do think that it makes me feel good about getting older, because 20 years ago I looked better, but I couldn't have written these books. So what a gift it is to be here and to be my age and to have my thoughts and my experience and this opportunity. It's like, this is actually the best time in my life. So I'm not like, oh God, I should get
beautiful.
a face. It's fine.
It really is. It's just incredible. How old are your boys now?
They are 26, 23, and 18. 18's leaving for college a week from tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. What a cool talkative time.
Yeah, no, it's exciting.
Because you've still kind of got that. 18's still young, but now he's launching. So it's like, oh my gosh.
They don't launch.
You did it.
Not launching.
Yeah.
18's not launching anywhere, no.
Yeah. I think 22 is launching.
Yeah.
And then 25 is launched. That's what I think. That's been my...
I like that.
It takes a little longer than they advertised when they were telling you should get pregnant. I'll just warn you about that.
Yes.
No, we will take it.
Yes.
We're also in the thick of it with younger kids. Hannah's younger than mine, but I have 3 girls, and mine are 11, 9, and 6.
Oh my goodness.
So
yes.
Wow. That's so
cool. Yes. I have it's so fun. Middle school next year with the girls. So that's,
that's not fun.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
I'm dreading it. I'm dreading it. I am not ready.
And just
I'm like, my sister is walking through that season. She has a teenager, a 13-year-old, an 8-year-old little girl, and then she has a 3-year-old little boy. And so she's like, I have one at literally every stage. And watching the 13-year-old boy, I'm just like, I am not ready. I am not prepared. I'm like, nope. No. I'm just going to pause where I am right now today. And
I think that middle school is, first of all, it's so universal, the PTSD that we all have. And it is a fire that you have to walk through to become an adult. Yep. And it's like army training. I mean, the stuff that you learn by how badly everyone acts is like stuff you'll take with you for the rest of your life.
So true.
Fascinating. Yes. And people always ask me, like, oh, you don't have daughters. How do you write about, the experience of a middle school girl? I'm like, because it was like yesterday. Like I was a middle school girl. Yeah, I remember.
We don't forget that trauma.
No.
I wish we did.
No.
I know.
The worst kind. Yes.
I know. On the topic of motherhood, I'm going to take part in your worst nightmare and read your own words to you, Annabelle, because I loved this so much. It's short. It's a short quote, and I really loved it because it just hit for me. It's from Summer Romance. You wrote, the thing about motherhood is that day to day, there's no measurable outcome. The mark of a successful day is just getting everyone back in bed. This is the first part. I love that. And then I wanted to read that. I sat with that. And then from your website, I just was like, yes, you said, I find that it's easier raising 3 kids than it was raising 1. So I, first of all, in that first part from Summer Romance, I just wanted to thank you as a mom in the trenches with 3 little girls in middle school and all of it. Like, you write in a way that makes me feel really encouraged as a mom. I feel like I'm not alone. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, just getting through the day is a victory. That was just so beautifully put in your book. And then I wanted to know more about what you thought about 3 being easier than 1. Sort of what you're more about
Yeah,
that.
it's really God, it's really like blowing my mind that you just brought that up. Um, First of all, yes, I spent a long time like with 3 kids, just being like, is it 9 o'clock yet? Because like the older one's going to go to bed, and I like, when is this going to? When is dinner over? Like, just getting through it. Um, and then
Right.
I wrote that on my website, and I actually think I didn't understand it when I wrote it because I probably wrote that 10 years ago. Writing
Mm.
summer romance is makes me understand what I meant about having 3 kids. I think what I meant is having 3 kids gives me the chance to not focus so much on all of them because I can't. Like when I had one child, I was so obsessed with this kid that I could have turned him into like a narcissist because I was like,
Mm.
oh, look at you. See the sip of water? Oh, I so there is something about raising children and backing and having by necessity backing off a little bit that is not only easier for you, it's easier for them. And
Mm.
I think I was about to say our generation, but I might be a different generation than you. But like my mother's generation, they didn't know where we were at any time. They were off
Mm.
like smoking cigarettes and doing whatever they were doing. Um, we all just kind of were raised like by the neighborhood. And that was such a gift to us. And for some reason, my generation has become a totally different kind of parent where we're like up in their stuff about everything. And that's weird that they all have anxiety. I mean, it's like it's been this
Yeah.
weird parenting shift
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
happened.
Hmm.
And I think it's a gift for my kids that I had 3 so that I could back off by necessity. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
That's the first time
And it's
I
so
thought that out loud, so it's pop.
I really no, I love that so
I mean,
much.
I
And
probably, I think 2.5 kids would have been the right number for me. Like 3 for me
yeah.
is a lot of kids.
Yeah.
But if I had
Yes.
8 kids, like I don't know, maybe they'd
Yeah.
all just be really confident because they were making their own dinner.
Yeah. It's so something I'm learning on the way, but it rings true in my family. I come from 4 and boy, girl, girl, boy. And my mom was so strict with my oldest, like not even funny. And by the 4th, my baby brother, we're talking like, I mean, ramen 3 times a day, like top ramen was his like meal, no rules. Like he was watching rated R movies when he was like 10. We were like, wait, what? Like, every rule. And he's the one who went to Harvard Law School and was number 1 in his class. And he's literally the best human. He's kind, he's good, he's wonderful. So I look at our family and I'm like, the letting go, I think it's made him who he was
Wow.
actually, because I think that freedom he had is just different. So I think the more you have, the more you can kind of relax.
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, my siblings and I are all 5 years apart. So by the time
Oh,
I'm a
really?
baby, the
Yeah.
time I came along, like when I say my mom was over it, like she was over it. Like
Yeah.
I was just like doing whatever. And I really got a lot of confidence from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's
I
really
think
hard.
it's
I'll
true.
never get it right.
It's
They'll try
just
to get that right.
universally
I
true.
know. No, but
Yes.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's fun to hear from you about, your motherhood journey. And I think it's really cool that you wrote about that before. Would you ever write nonfiction again, or do you ever dabble in essays or columns anymore? Or does that
It's
still
funny. It
call to
used to
you?
be like that was the muscle that I had that was quite strong. And I
Yeah.
could just bang out an essay all the time. Because I'm
Yeah.
writing fiction, I don't I haven't done it. It's so strange.
Yeah.
And every once in a while
Yeah.
somebody will ask me to write an essay for a publication, and it's like I honestly have to completely rewire my brain to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And if I were to write
Yeah.
nonfiction again, like a book, I'm not going to write a memoir because you would be bored to death. It's like I'm a person, I write, and I have a dog. Like there's nothing to say. And I'm not going to write about my children because it's none of my business. So I don't know. I think fiction for now.
Yeah. The
That
thing
seems
that's
like a
interesting
sweet
is once
spot.
you write fiction, once you write fiction, I used to like want to write nonfiction and now I couldn't have less of a desire. Like, no, because fiction, the world is your oyster. Words are infinite. Like you can just play all day and it's going to be far more interesting than anything I
Well,
could ever say about
I also
myself.
hate
So
research,
yeah.
and I cut corners just as
Yeah.
I am not precise and I have no attention to detail. So if I were writing nonfiction, I would get all the details 80% right, and I would be sued, and people would be after me.
Yes. Yes. That's what
Oh
one
my
thing that my
goodness.
mom has keep like harping on me through writing this thing. She's like, you have to do your research. If you're going to write about something, you have to know about it. And I'm like, I'm only going to write about things I know about because I hate research and I refuse to, like you said, I hate paying attention to details. So I'm just going to write what I know.
Hannah, you know how I get around that is I don't write about real places. So, for example,
yes, that's what I've done too. Yes.
That's
made up a
smart.
Long Island town, because if I did a real Long Island town, I would irritate everyone who lives there by having the stores in the wrong order or I'm just going to make up a town. And then I'm right.
I figured that out with my first draft because I tried really hard to base it off this town. And then I was like, I'm going to have people coming after me because the street name was wrong. And so I was like, you know what? We're just going to make it all up. It's going to be all fiction, every bit of it.
I love it.
Well, since Nora goes off script, you have been doing a book a year. I know we kind of touched on this earlier. Do you kind of see yourself keeping this path with one book per year, or what do you see the future of your career kind of looking like as far as your releases and your rate at what you're putting out books?
Well, I have a book that I'm finishing now, God willing. That's coming out the beginning of next June, I think. And then I've signed a contract for 2 more Junes through 2027. So I will be doing this for the foreseeable future. This just makes me think. I did a launch event for Tessa Bailey when her book, The Au Pair Affair, came out a couple weeks ago. And she was talking about how she's really slowing down and she's going to start just doing 2 books a year. And I was like, can you say that again? She's slowing down to
Rewind.
Isn't that wild?
It's wild.
I saw another author say that recently, Emma St. Clair. She's been indie, now she's publishing a traditional book, but she said something similar. And I was like, wow, 4 books a year for some people. They actually do that.
And I actually write fast. I don't edit as I go. And I'm not careful about my language. I'll go back, but
let me just interrupt and say that you're making me feel seen. Like Stephanie knows because she's been with me on this journey and she knows how fast and reckless I am. So you're making me feel validated. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hannah,
she drops so quickly.
That because I've known you now for half an hour, I think that probably the fast and reckless part of you is your creative part, right? The part of you that's going to jump in and go and laugh is probably the best part. So that's the part you want to follow. And then when you're done, go back with your sensible left brain and your reason.
Yes.
That you fix all that stuff. But I find that if I write a chapter, there's a chapter in Summer Romance where she cleans up her kitchen. It was the most satisfying thing I've ever written in my life. I just really wanted that kitchen cleaned up. I wrote it in one sitting. Like I wrote it in, I don't know, 15 minutes. Like it just came out of me. That writing for me is always better and more resonant than the writing that I'm like, did I split my infinitive? Let me go back.
Right.
That just gets me stuck.
Yes. Totally. Well, we're
Stephanie
so
can
happy
attest.
We get just we're happy that we get books from you. I mean, yeah, it's like we know what it takes to write a book. So to me, a book a year, I'm like, you're on a schedule and you're still promoting summer romance and turning in your new one. And like that's a schedule to upkeep. But we're excited that we get more summers with you into the future. Yay. Something else, probably our last bigger question before we wrap up. We would love, if you're up for it, to talk a little bit about spice level, because you give us this really, really tasteful, sexy middle ground where I would say it's closed door, but we get that low spice. Was that, in the way that you approached that, was that an intentional choice? Is it just kind of the way you naturally came to it? Were you always there? What are your thoughts on your books in that spice category?
Yeah, I actually never thought about this until I was editing Nora Goes Off Script. Uh,
Yeah.
and and I think there was like a pull for more spice, and I
Mm-hmm.
tried, but I feel like you can only do what you can do. And
Yeah.
you have a writing style, and the style of a book that I'm always going to write a different book, but the style of a book is probably going to be consistent. And that
Mm-hmm.
level of like tension and like sexiness before the kiss
Mm-hmm.
feels natural to write to me. I like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Going through all the body parts and where they end up going, and they like
Yep.
it is so not natural to me. I mean, I actually, when I
Yeah.
Mhm.
read the rom com, I immediately messaged Devin Daniels and I was like, I can't believe how easily you just pull that off. Like, I honestly,
Totally.
$1 billion, I couldn't have written that book. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, that stuff comes so easily to me. So that's the book she's writing. You know what I mean? So
Totally.
it's not like, oh, I'm trying to be closed door, or I'm trying to be more spicy. It's like whatever
Right.
your writing style leans towards is what ends up getting on the page. And I love
I
all of
love
it. I
that.
read all of it. But
Yeah.
what I write kind of
Same.
lands in that one chili pepper spot.
I think it's just it goes with the style of your book so well and just
Mhm.
feels really natural. I know I joke about audiobooks and body parts because something about listening to an audiobook and all of a sudden hearing all the body parts makes me laugh. Like, I don't know,
Yes.
reading it doesn't really like phase me the same way. And I cannot find it sexy. I'm just like, what is happening?
You know, I was walking my and I was listening to The Paradise Problem by Christina Lopez.
Oh,
Mhm.
I have the hardback. I've heard it's
Okay,
spicy.
well, there's a scene. They're in some kind of a pizza kitchen. I don't know. When you read it, you'll know. But I'm listening
Yeah.
to this, and I'm walking my dog, and all the old ladies in my neighborhood are, oh, good morning, good morning. I'm like, I just, I need to not be right here right now.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I know.
Don't you love it?
Or like, yeah, or occasionally if I'm like, have one going in my car and like my girls get in and I turn on my phone, I'm like, off,
Yeah,
let's turn the radio
Yes.
off.
yeah.
Mommy's book on chipmunk speed because I listen at like 2.0. It's fine. Oh my goodness. Well, that's just, I love that spot. It reminds me, I don't
Mhm.
know if anyone has ever told you this, but you're like the spice level, again, it's just you being you, but where it kind of falls reminds me of the way Catherine Center writes her
Mhm.
sort of spice, for lack of a better word. It lands similarly.
I
Like it
love
feels so
Catherine
natural.
Center.
She's so
I love her
lovely.
books. I've never met her. I love all the vibes she puts out.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm.
she's cool.
she's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had her on here a couple of weeks
Oh,
ago,
did you?
and we did, and it was just such a treat. She is the
Yes.
sunshine rooted in so much wisdom. And she's both, and she's like you in
Mhm.
that way with her books and in person. It's like there's that
Mhm.
levity and it was hilarious, but then whoa, you're like, this is like a deep human being
Wow.
who is a real artist. She's great. And her background looked like her. It was like she had some sort of like colorful quilt hanging in the background. It was just
Yes.
yeah, you guys are just two of my favorites, and we're just so happy we got to.
I don't even know where I
Yes.
Ch- oh, you look. Great.
Well, we always love to end on more of just a lighter question, and we would love to know one of your favorite books, or maybe your latest 5-star read, or even something that you're watching that you are just loving right now. So,
I am working really hard, so I'm not writing or I'm not watching anything.
Yeah.
The book that I just finished that I loved was Margot's Got Problems. Money Trouble.
Oh, I've been seeing that one
yes.
everywhere. Did you love
I,
it?
I loved it. I loved the writing. I loved the idea and the message. I got really stressed out about the protagonist. Like I actually wanted to
Hmm.
dive into the book and save her. I think that was
Yeah.
like my maternal instinct kicking in. But I really love that. My favorite book of the summer is called Rules for Second Chances by Maggie North. She is a Canadian author. It's her debut, and it's a rom com about a married couple.
Hmm.
The wife is mistaken for a server at her own birthday party and realizes that she needs to like step up and take a more, active role in her life. It's just,
Ah.
it's so good. I can't even say it's the best book I've read this year.
Oh, I can't wait to read it.
Rules for Second
I
Chances.
Okay. We'll link it up in the show
Yeah.
notes, and I want to read it. I love a good married
Yeah.
story, rom-com. I feel like they're a little bit harder to find or come by,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but
And so
I've been
this
married
is
almost 18
she's a
years, and
different kind of writer. It's just
I love
yeah.
that.
I read it a while back. It's like I'm still thinking about it.
I love that. And it's her debut, you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we will check those out. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was so full of it all. I get asked a fair amount of times, like, is your podcast for readers or writers? And I'm like, honestly, it's both. Most of the listeners that I talk to are people with writing aspirations. Maybe they're
Mhm.
querying, but those people are also avid readers. So it's fun to touch on it all with you. So
I loved it.
thank you so much for having us. It was so
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank you
Yes.
again, Annabelle,
Yeah.
and our listeners. Yeah, you guys can find Annabelle on Instagram at Annabel Monaghan and on her website, www.annabelmonaghan.com. And we'll just keep posting about her books, hopefully get you back on here next year when your next June book comes out. And thanks
Yes.
Thank
again.
you. Thanks,
Of
guys.
course. Bye, everyone.
Good luck.